Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 893 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's podcast, we're going to be speaking with Charissa. Now, Charissa has 6 children, and one of them has type 1 diabetes. But there's a lot of autoimmune going on in her family. It's an interesting conversation, to say the least. While you're listening to me have that conversation with Charissa, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you have type 1 diabetes or are the parent of a child with type 1, like Charissa is, you can go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete their survey. Doing that helps move type 1 research forward. It takes you fewer than 10 minutes. It helps you. It helps me. It helps the world. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. I'm out of stuff to say. There's still a lot of music. Oh, geez. Hey, you can get 10% off your first... No, that's going to be on tomorrow's episode. Oh well, now the music's over. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Cozy Earth. Get great sheets, towels, and clothing at CozyEarth.com. And when you do that, use my offer code, JUICEBOX, at checkout to save 35% off your entire order. Actually, you have to check out the webpage because I just said like towels and sheets, and that's not fair. There's way more there. I'm wearing the sweatshirt today from Cozy Earth, and it's banging. It's so soft, comfy. 35% off with Juicebox. Head over now. Today's podcast is also sponsored by the Contour Next Gen blood glucose meter. Now, we all have a blood glucose meter, right? If you're listening to this podcast, there's a meter in your house somewhere. The question is it a great one? Is it accurate? Is it reliable? Does it offer second chance testing? Because if yours doesn't, Contour Next Gen does. ContourNext.com/juicebox.
I am Charissa. I am a mom to 6, and my number 5 is my type 1 kiddo. So I think that's my introduction.
Did you have these 6 children in the classic way, or did you find them places, or what?
No, they're all mine. Yeah,
They're all mine.
I popped them out the good old fashioned way.
How old are you, Charissa?
I am 38.
Holy Hannah. Are you building an army, or are you doing this for Jesus? What is the reason you have 6 children?
Yeah, a little army. I thought maybe a football team or something, because I only have one girl and the rest are all boys.
Don't stop now.
Oh, no, I'm good. Once the youngest was out of diapers, so there's no turning back.
Was there ever a thought of a 7th?
Probably more for me than my husband.
Well, yeah, because, right. What made you want to have such a big family?
I just always did. I mean, when I was little and I played dolls, I had all of them were all of my children all at once. Like I didn't just like pick one. So I wanted them all. And that was, when I met my husband, Andy, I was like, listen, I'm going to want a lot. And if that's scary for you, you're going to have to leave. And I think he did debate it, but he stayed. So
can I ask, this is a serious question that's going to sound like a joke. Do you hoard other things?
No, I like to throw away a lot of things. Really.
Right. That's interesting. Did you come from a large family?
No, I'm the middle. I have an older sister and a younger sister, and that's it.
Oh, it's fascinating. Was there any point during the making of the babies, like around the 3rd one, where you thought, this is good? Or did you were you just completing the set at that point, or were you really did you never doubt it as you were going along?
No, I think had my body not said, hey, the first one was the 10 years from the last one, And the last one definitely felt a little bit harder. And I think like if that would have been a thing, I think I'd have had more. But I will say my body felt it 10 years later, a lot more. And I also wanted to have like even numbers. So, you know, like an amusement park, somebody had a partner, that sort of thing.
Charissa, I'm doing some light math in my head right now. 10 years has 120 months. That's simple math, right? But 9 months to make a baby times 6 babies is 54 months. So 120 minus 54. So in the last 10 years, you've only not been pregnant for 66 months.
Yeah, good times, right?
I'm going to divide that by 12 real quick, just for fun. So you've been pregnant 4.5 of the last 10 years. Holy hell. Okay. All right. I don't know. We should like nominate you for something, I guess. Like, for living.
I think there's a lot more other, you know, crazy people, if you will, than me. But it is kind of fun when you walk down the street and people are like, what? Are they all yours? Like, look at them. They all look. Yes.
This lady stole children. she's rounded them up and she's taking them somewhere. Someone stop her. So there's a 10-year-old. And how young is the youngest?
So actually my oldest is, she's about to turn 15 and my youngest is about to turn 5.
Oh,
so there's just 10 years between them all.
So there's,
yeah.
Okay. Well, just for fun, 15. What's the next one? 15, 13, 11, 9, 7, and then I'm almost 5. Okay. And which one has type 1? The 7-year-old?
The 7-year-old, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, are you going to have enough energy to record this? You okay?
Man, I mean, they keep me going. So sure. Yeah.
Is this the first year your youngest is going to school?
No, we did go back to school, right at the beginning. So he was diagnosed, May 24th, 2020. And then we had the option, where we live to either go back or stay virtual when we went back to school.
Yeah.
And that was a big debate for us, but we were like, well, hopefully a lot of people aren't. And then this is a good chance for the school nurse and the school to learn him when there's less kids.
Okay. So
even though that felt like really terrifying at the time, because he was, only diagnosed for a few months and he was still kind of honeymooning and he was NDI and all the things, I was like, we were thinking it's probably our best bet to put him in now. And then even though we couldn't go into the building, like make all the phone calls, because hopefully they'll have more time to hear us when we call the nurse's office.
Did that work out?
Yeah, I think so. I think it really did. He was the only type 1 that year in kindergarten. And then partway through first grade, there was a second one that joined. And then ending last year, there was a third one that came to the school. And so then this year, there's still 3 there this year. So
that was actually very interesting. You misunderstood my question, but I let you finish because what you were telling me was fantastic.
Sorry.
I just wanted to know if the 5-year-old, if this is their first year at school.
Oh, my 5-year-old, he's not 5 yet. So he does not start school.
Okay. So
he's home.
So you sent 5 kids off to school when school started last week.
I sent 5 off. Yes. And this is our first year with 3 schools, because now we have high school, middle school, and elementary.
Do you own your own bus company, or does the school come and get them at the house?
We do have a mega van, so sorta, and we did name it Adventure Bus, so sorta, but not really.
So before I ask you about the diabetes stuff, I want to understand. Please don't, I'm not looking for your tax return here, but would you characterize the money that your household makes as amazing, average, or below average?
Probably average.
Okay. How do you manage this?
So I stay at home, and my 2 oldest boys, we're the same size. So that's really convenient. Mm-hmm. And then the next ones kind of all wear those. So in a lot of ways, we live, near the Austin, Texas area. So it's not the cheapest.
Right.
However, we moved from Columbus, Ohio, and the job change did come with a raise there. And it has allowed me to be able to continue to stay home. In my previous life, I used to do hair. So it's not like it would have been an amazing bump depending on what area of town you worked in and how many hours I wanted to put in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so my priority was still going to be my family, because like I kind of told you already, like my dream was my family.
Sure.
So the job was to get me to that. And then I'll probably change careers when I go back to work next year. Just because.
Are you looking forward to going back?
Yes, I think so. I do enjoy having something that's just for me. I do a lot of volunteering in a lot of different places. So it'll be nice to have all those hours make money.
Yeah.
What
for
the family.
What do you think you spend on food in a month?
In a month, probably around a little over 1,000, maybe 1,200.
Okay. And you just feed the kids like it's the army. They get powdered eggs at every meal and a piece of old toast.
We do buy about 10 dozen eggs a week. We don't drink a lot of milk, so that's not super crazy. We eat a lot of fresh produce and like meat, and that's probably the biggest
part of
expenses on those things, right? And then really some of those like convenient low carb snacks that we want to have like in the bag just to take, those are expensive.
Right.
So we don't the whole family doesn't eat those. Those are usually just for Titus, who's my type 1. So the rest of them will kind of eat something a little bit different. That's not always true, but for the most part, we just try to eat like normal real food as opposed to just buying the convenient things.
Do you find yourself coaching them towards trades when they talk about what they're going to do when they get older? Like,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm looking at the sheer number of people, right? And then I'm doing the math on what college costs. And there's sort of there's like an upper tier level of what college costs, which at this point is, I'm going to say between $65,000 and $75,000 a year. Right. And then there's sort of that like $30,000, $40,000 range. And then there's lower, obviously. There's some schools that are $6,000 a year, and there's community colleges you pay a few $1,000s for. But even if you went like, I don't know, mid-level, like if all of your kids were like good students, they're like, I want to go to school and I want to be an accountant or this or that. You're looking at like, I don't know, it's like $1 million to send them all to college.
Mm-hmm.
Do you just, so my point is, when they're like, I want to be an accountant, do you say, wouldn't you prefer being a roofer? Like, that's what I would do. I would just be like, what's underserved in the world? Plumbing. Would you like to be a plumber? I'd
kind of trade school.
Yes.
You through.
Yeah. How about that?
I don't try to. I don't think.
Chrissy, you disappeared for a second. So just start over there. But I'm wondering if you guys talk about college for the kids, like you and your husband, when you're sitting exhausted in a pile at the end of the day. Like, what do you say to each other about that?
I think that for the most part, we try not to worry about it because, at some point I'll go back to work. And if we continue to live like we do now, when I do work, everything I make can go for the colleges and the cars and all the things that we're gearing up for in like 10 seconds, really.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think we do, because right now my daughter has been talking about being a doctor, and she's the first one. So cool. We'll be paying for her while everybody else is also going through
oh my God.
forever.
Have you considered abandoning? You should abandon them. That would be the best way. Let the state take them.
Yeah. So, whatever I think I'm stumbling over this one a little bit because I think because of my personal like family stuff, like my growing up with my sister as a teacher and then became a principal, and she's amazing, super like done all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've also like, and then I did cosmetology school, and really that's kind of what I did. And then, but I also still have like some regrets of not just going and doing like the nursing side of things that I had considered previously.
Mm-hmm.
And doing it before I got married and had my kids and, you know, did all of those things.
Yeah.
That like, I think because of those types of things, it makes me want to like encourage them to
Sure.
go be and do whatever it is, their biggest dreams early.
Yeah.
And then change their mind later, if that makes sense.
Oh, may I suggest trying to groom the 13-year-old into being a bank robber? I think that's get him working for the family.
Ironically, that might be the one who would do it.
The Contour line of blood glucose meters is just excellent. I'm going to go right to the website right now. Contour Next, you can hear me typing, .com. Then there's a / and then Juicebox. So the ad's about the Contour Next Gen meter, but there are so many meters there. Oh my gosh. Right at the top of the page, blood glucose monitoring. Click on that. You see meters tab, Contour Next Gen, Contour Next 1, the Contour Next, Next Easy. So many great meters. There's an offer there for a free meter. You should check that out. Test strips, of course, for the Contour meter are just fantastic. They offer second chance testing, which means if you like hit some blood but don't get enough, you can go back and get more without ruining the quality of the test or the accuracy. Of course, it doesn't need a big blood drop, but I'm just saying something could happen. You could fumble around with it, or I don't know what you do, mess up somehow. Not the point. The point is, if you do that, you go back and you go bing, bing, hit it again, and you get a nice accurate test. And don't waste that test strip. ContourNext.com / Juicebox. My daughter has been using a Contour meter forever and ever, and we love it. For all the reasons that I'm outlining here, like the bright light, the easy to read screen, the easy to hold meter, and those second chance test strips. ContourNext.com / Juicebox. When you get there, you can even click on the Buy Now button, because it's possible, this is crazy, but it's possible that your meter and strips could be cheaper in cash without going through your insurance than it is for what you're buying now through your insurance, which, mind blown, that's a thing. Click the Buy Now link and check it out. That gives you 4 options of places to look online, like Walmart, Amazon, Walgreens, CVS, Meijer, Kroger, Target, and Rite Aid. ContourNext.com / Juicebox. You deserve an accurate meter. Don't just take the one the doctor gave you. Do a little research. Get a good one. I'm just going to keep rolling here if you don't mind. CozyEarth.com. That's all you have to do. Then you hit enter. Takes you right there. Oh, what's this that pops up in front of me? Unlock $50 off by entering my email address. Oh, you can do that if you want to. Couldn't hurt to save $50. But that's not why I'm on the website. I'm here to tell you that bedding, bath stuff like towels and washcloths, bundles of ribbed terry cloth bath towels, premium waffle bath towels. Goodness gracious me. Dry your wet butt off with soft towels. Know what I mean? Or how about the bedding? There's so many great sheets. There's the linen sheets and the viscose bamboo. Those are the ones I have on actually my bed right now. I can't tell you how just temperate they are. Never too hot, never too cold. Bamboo sheets. Terrific. From Cozy Earth. Let's see. There's men's attire, which I am wearing some of now, and ladies' attire. Pants, shorts, dresses, robes, wait, what is this? Premium scrunchies. How could there be such a thing? Let us look. I'll be goddamn. Premium scrunchies. Made with viscose bamboo. Who would know about this? Well, I guess we all know now. The reviews for the scrunchies are great. There's everything. What do we just say? Clothes, towels, sheets. There's a Mother's Day gift guide here. New arrivals. You can't go wrong. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 35% off your entire order. That's a pretty big percent. Hey, whether you're interested in Cozy Earth, Contour Meters, or any of the other sponsors, using my links really helps the podcast. There are links in the show notes of the audio app you're listening in now. There are links at juiceboxpodcast.com, or you can type them in the way I say them and do all the stuff. The offer code, if there's an offer code, or with most of them, just go to the link. These things help out the podcast. Thank you very much for considering that. Let's get you back to Charissa. Oh, did I pick the right one?
You think you did, yeah. Or the 9-year-old. It's a toss-up. But
How long ago?
Yeah.
How long ago was Titus diagnosed?
So, it's about 2.5 years.
Okay, but 2.5 years ago. So he was pretty young. He was not quite 5.
I mean, he was just 5, I should say.
Oh, okay. Right around 5 years old.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. I just,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know exactly when they were born. I'm just guessing from numbers. So
Yeah.
how did it present?
So you want the long version, the short version?
I want the version you think people would be interested in.
So I knew nothing about type 1 diabetes. I've heard of it, but I didn't know enough to like watch for symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So they were all there. However, it was right when COVID was happening. It was right in May. It was when everybody was home for spring break. It was right in Texas. It was like, time to put on all the shorts and change all the clothes. And so, even though he was starting to lose weight, I saw that. He's kind of my beefy guy. Like we call him the tank,
Mm-hmm.
because he's not chubby, but he is very solid. He has more muscle mass and just general mass to him than my other kiddos all have.
Maybe combined.
Yeah. I mean, like he's just always been heavier, bigger guy, even though he's not like round and like full cheeky, you know what I mean? Like he's
Sure.
not like chubby. So you didn't like think him like, oh, look, he's finally, he's finally like, catching energy wise, catching up to the food he's eaten or something like that. You know what I mean?
I understand.
It wasn't like that. However, because his brothers are a little bit more lean, when they were outside playing, or we were playing in like the water and the pool and the sandbox in our backyard, then I was like, I did say like, man, he must have just had a big growth spurt. He's really kind of shot up, and he's thinned down more, but he still was not looking like scrawny or anything like that. He just looked thinner, closer to his brother's body type,
Mm-hmm.
just a lot different for him.
Yeah.
And then because he was also not wearing pants anymore, he was wearing shorts. Like it's not like his clothes seemed a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so we had also been helping our neighbor across the street, wanted like a bunch of rocks taken out of like a flower bed. And so we had been over, my older boys had been going over and like pulling it all up, and there was a lot. And so over like a couple days, I would go like check on them. And so we had gone over there, and it was kind of hot, and I went over and I guess I should back up and say, like, while we were playing and I noticed like he's kind of like lost a little bit of weight, we hadn't really left the house because of COVID. So like there was no stopping to like say, why are you going to the bathroom so many times? Because like he could go whenever he wanted.
Yeah, kind of freedom in the house. You didn't notice it happening as much. Yeah.
There's a busyness in the house that like people are in and out of the bathroom and coming in and out of the house all the time, that like it was fine. Like, go ahead, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And there's water in the refrigerator, so he can go get it whenever. But we were also playing outside, playing in the pool and the sandbox and whatever. And it's hot. And so we're all drinking a lot of water. And because we drink a lot of water in general, like we don't drink a lot of milk or juice, there was no like asking for it. You can just go get it.
Right. No, I understand.
Free to get. They keep cups on the counter. So, but like when it really kind of came close to like, oh my goodness, I was like, man, he kind of feels like he kind of seemed like something's off. And like right before that, he had cut his chin. Like, I don't remember if they were like jumping, playing, whatever, but he had a pretty good gash, and we went to like urgent care and they glued it shut,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't really hold. So like that kind of kept opening until part of that, I was like, he's getting an infection. Cause like he would play with us, but then he'd also come in and like lay on the couch for a little bit. And he's not really like a lay around guy. I do have one of my kiddos is like the lay around. Like he wants to go read a book for a while and not go be wild all the time.
Right.
But that's not really Titus. That's
Gotcha.
more, that's actually more Lucas. We call him Lazy Lou because he wants to go lay around. But so he would kind of come in, lay down. And I'm like, I kept taking his temperature and I'm like, I mean, he's on watch. Like he doesn't really have anything going on, but like, and then I kept like trying to treat this, like his chin. Cause I'm like, maybe he's getting an infection. Like, but again, I was like, I don't really want to take him to the doctor unless we see something. So I just kept trying to clean it and put like, Muprosin on it, or, you know what I mean? Like just trying to take care of it and keep it clean. So anyway, we went over to the neighbor's house and we were trying to help like with the rocks, and I was helping for a little bit, and he came over with me, and then he was like, I feel like I'm going to throw up. And I was like, oh, well, you're probably getting too hot. Let's go home. And so, and he drank like some Propel while we were out there. And so we went back over to the house, gave him something to drink. He started feeling a little bit better. And that was a Saturday. And he laid, we did all the things. He didn't really eat dinner because he didn't really feel great. He ate a little bit. And then he went to bed, and I checked his temperature. I checked him one more time before he went to sleep. After he had gone to sleep, and his room was upstairs and he shared with his brother. And then, so Sunday morning, he and my 13-year-old is the only one who sleeps in. But so everybody else had been up and moving around for a while. And it was about like 9:30 because church had come on like the TV, right? Like we weren't leaving the house. So we were watching, and I was finishing up making everybody breakfast. And I'm like, where's Titus? Somebody go get your brother, please. Because it's time to eat breakfast. And we're gonna sit and do church together. And my daughter, Kaylee, went upstairs to get him, and she came carrying him down the stairs. And she's like, he doesn't feel good. And so she brought him down and like stood him up, and then he was just like breathing really heavy.
Yeah.
Like, that's not good. And he wouldn't talk to us. I'm like, so I like trying to like finish making these eggs, and like, I'm stirring it, and I'm mostly just looking at him, and I'm like, this is not right. Why is he breathing so hard? And why is he not talking? I took his temperature, and it was something like 95.8, like super cold. And she's like, Mom, I found him on the bathroom floor, breathing really hard. And I was like, was he asleep? Did he get up to go to the bathroom? Didn't feel good? She's like, I don't know if he was asleep or not. He had his eyes open, but he's not talking to me. And so like, we're trying to talk to him. We're trying to ask him what's wrong. He's not really responding. And I'm like, I don't even care about those stupid eggs. Like, I'm done. I don't care if these are done. Something's not right. So I call a friend of mine who has, she fostered and then adopted a lot of medical kids.
Okay.
I say a lot. She fostered a lot of kiddos, and then she adopted 3 medical kiddos. So they have a lot of stuff at their house. And I'm like, listen, I need like a pulse ox, and I don't know, something's not right. So she came over pretty quick, maybe within like 10 minutes. And we were trying to get like his, like, numbers and stuff. And it wouldn't read. And he was so cold. I had him like wrapped in a comforter and on the front porch, like in the sun. And then he threw up. And I'm like, nope, we're done. I'm not staying here. We're taking him in somewhere because this is not okay.
Krista,
like,
can I ask
he's still not talking.
If it wasn't for COVID, do you think you would have gone sooner?
100%.
Okay. I just was wondering what you were doing. I mean, because on the floor, unresponsive is,
Yeah. I mean, like he wasn't talking. He would like stand and he would like, whatever, but like he wasn't like
a zombie.
He was more like lethargic.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, but not like not responsive, like couldn't shake him awake. He was awake and standing talking to us, but not like something else. You know what I mean? If he was just breathing heavy and unresponsive, I'd have called 911 and it'd have been a squad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he wouldn't talk to us, respond to us that way. And so Then he threw up everywhere, and I'm like, nope. And I quickly, like, all over me and all over him, like, we quickly showered him and me, and I started like, and I'm like instructing like my family, I'm like, you go get a bag, you go get a book, you go get whatever, and get it all packed up. And I like packed stuff for him and me. Like, I knew we weren't going to just be there for like a day. You know what I mean? Like, I knew this was a minute. Like, this something was not right. And so we got to the ER, and you know, they do all the classic checking on things, but they were trying to get him to like hold his arms up for an x-ray. And he was like, just kind of like crying because he like really just couldn't. And they gave him an IV in one arm, and he didn't even flinch to that. And you're like, no, that's not, that doesn't feel like a normal 5-year-old response. Right. Like, and
can I ask you,
of course, like
at that point, having no feedback yet from the doctors, what was going through your head? Did you have I was not understanding why they weren't moving faster. Okay. But about his condition, were you like making things up in your head? Like, what was your worst nightmare in that moment?
Yeah. I mean, I was like, he's never had asthma. So like, I don't understand the breathing. He isn't talking, and they're trying to make him like walk down to the room, like, you know, from triage down to the room. I'm like, why are we doing triage at all? Like, why are we not just going to a room? This doesn't feel like you guys are understanding how urgent this feels to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, I feel like this feels a lot more urgent to me. I feel like you are not seeing how wrong something is happening here. And I remember being enough in a daze that it was a while later that one of the nurses said, after we found out what was going on, that like one of the nurses said, okay, he's no longer tachycardic, that like I even realized that was happening. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah, like there was enough happening that I was like, why is people, and I think people were moving quicker. I think I was worried enough that I was like, I feel like y'all aren't doing enough. Right. Why are you not doing more? So they did do a decent amount of things. They did all the lab work. They did all kinds of stuff, and we were kind of waiting. And the rapid breathing, and the fact also his skin was like, really like patchy, meaning like, it was kind of like purpley and like, almost had like circular kind of pattern on it. And all of his extremities were like super cold.
It sounds like his circulation was poor.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, it was not good. And I think like he had probably gone into DKA while we were doing the rock stuff. Like he was going into DKA then. Yeah, that's where I had it. And I didn't know. Mm. And then I let him go to bed. Right. And I'm like, I cannot believe I let him go.
Well, what was his blood sugar when they finally figured out he had diabetes?
It was still only like in the 380s. Okay. Which to me doesn't sound like insane considering, you know, his A1C, I want to say, was 11.2. Mm-hmm. And then what kind of gets me a little bit is that because they don't do like the urine test in the pediatrician's office, like had he just had one at his well check, they'd have seen it was elevated then. Probably then, yeah. Because he had his well check, and then to have 11.2, it had to have been higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How long did it take him? I'm sorry, I was going to ask, how long did it take him to kind of bounce back after they got him, you know, the treatment he needed?
Yeah. So we were in the PICU for 2 days. And then they moved us to I want to say they moved us to a regular floor like that night. Mm-hmm. On the last, like the night of the second day. And then the next morning they did let us, like, that's when we kind of moved, and then we left like that evening. Okay. So he was there for about 3 days. Okay.
All right. This was completely unexpected. There's no other diabetes in your family?
There is nothing. There's no type 1. I will say, like, both of my parents, like their parents and siblings, or their parents and their parents' siblings, so going back like decently far, right? Didn't live a long time. So I feel like there's a possibility of it having been there because they had children, like my grandparents had children that died young, or they had nieces and nephews who died young. So like I think there's probably a possibility, but there's not enough history knowledge
To know.
there to know.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. How about other autoimmune issues?
Oh yeah, we're a mess.
How so?
Well, my niece was probably the first one that we realized had something. So she has juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and she was a little, like maybe 2 when she was diagnosed, and she was diagnosed because she had like broken bones that were like, why is she breaking so easily?
Right.
And then it had been a number of years because I want to say she's 12. Yes, she's in between 2 of mine. So she's 12. So it's probably been about 10 years from there. So, you know, she was 8-ish before Titus was diagnosed. And then really when Titus was diagnosed, that's when really, and then kind of when we found your podcast, and I started like digging in more and wanting to know more, then I looked for my own stuff, like what was wrong with, like, I have hypothyroid, but I was like, but there's enough weird things that like I need you to test for other things. Right. And so that was finally, you know, I fought with that for 14 years. And then really last year is when I was like, can you test me for Hashimoto's? And then my endocrinologist was like, yeah, it came back. You have that.
Well, hold on a second. So you have Hashimoto's, and the grandparents that you were talking about, are they on your side or your husband's side?
My side.
Your side. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going.
So really, and then my younger sister has it's probably fine to say, like an autoimmune like colon issue. So she can't have any dairy of any kind. And that was really diagnosed about 2 years ago.
Like she has colitis maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was trying to remember what it was earlier today, and I was like, I don't know.
Don't worry.
Figure it out.
Scott knows all of them. Yeah.
You probably have them in your brain bank. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So your sister has colitis.
Mm-hmm.
You have Hashimoto's. Your son has type 1.
Yes.
Right.
And then we've had like some weird things like pop up. So we did do TrialNet. Thank you for that.
Oh, cool.
So my 13-year-old Emmett has one marker, different than Titus. Titus only had one also, but different than Titus. And then my 9-year-old Lincoln has 2, and he was in a trial, which I originally thought, oh, we'll talk about this trial, but it was canceled about a month ago. And so he has 2, and they're different than either of the other boys.
Okay, so your 7-year-old has type 1, your 9-year-old has 2 markers for type 1, your 13-year-old has 1 marker for type 1.
Correct.
And they've all been tested.
And then everybody else is clear.
Yeah, okay.
Including my husband and I. We all did it. Okay.
You have Hashimoto's, your sister has colitis, and wow, that is a lot. Jeez. You okay?
And then really, like, my older sister has just recently been like referred to a rheumatologist. So she's just trying to discover what's going on there. And then my oldest 2 have now been referred to a rheumatologist to try to figure out what's kind of happening there. And we've had a few different markers of different things, not type 1, but other autoimmune things come up that we're in the discovery phase of now.
What are their symptoms?
Trying to figure out what's happening.
Your 2 older ones.
So Emmett he's 13. But over last year, he kind of got like sports suddenly became super hard. And he's always been like very athletic and, you know, do his things and just super busy, and you know what I mean? But he could not keep up in cross country. He could not keep up in football. And we're like, are you not trying? Like what? And actually, I feel really bad because I felt frustrated that he wasn't trying hard enough. Because I was like, why don't you care? You said you really wanted to do this, and now you're not working as hard. Now, I didn't really say it to him as much. You know what I mean? I try not to
Kind of
be
felt
that
it.
way,
Yeah.
but I did say, like, you know, are you okay? Because like you seemed a little more tired today.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I really noticed it. We do, my daughter's a swimmer, and it started because we started summer league swimming. And so all of my kids do summer league, except for the youngest. He's still more of a sinker than a swimmer. Mm-hmm. And so during summer league swim, that's when it really clicked in my head that something was not quite right, because he couldn't hit last year's times. And normally, like, last year's times, you kind of hit that in like the first meet, and then you improve on your times all summer.
Right.
At all the meets, because you have meets like almost every weekend for like 6 weeks.
What are his complaints?
He was just not able to keep up. Like, he just couldn't keep, like, he had no endurance, I guess.
Okay. Is he tired?
It's really like the biggest thing there. So like, he'd be fine in like the normal short spurts. He also has like ADHD, right? So like, he's also he can be very busy. And then, so it's sometimes harder. I think maybe sometimes a little bit harder to see there, because if he was like, if he was like a little bit more even all of the time, I think it would have been a little bit easier to spot. But because he's him, you kind of have to, like, you know, I thought maybe he was just like calming down a little bit more, you know what I mean? But then I was like, maybe he just can't keep up. But over last school year, he got everything. I mean, he had COVID and flu and strep and colds, and he got mono. Like, he had everything. And so I think mono is kind of what we assumed was playing a big part in it. But then I was like, I need more blood work. Like, please do more labs.
Yeah.
Like, please look into it more. And so when we did that, and our pediatrician is really good about, like, I now need you to do this. You might think I'm crazy, but let's just humor me here, and like, let's give it a shot. And so she will. And so that's what they did. And she's like, okay, I see some markers here. Now we're going to refer you to a rheumatologist for that.
Well, what did she see?
It was,
Chrissy, you have too many kids. There's too much there's too much happening in your head. I think you should just lock them in a closet and leave for 4 days. Leave them.
Well, did I just make people to break them? It's not fair. I was just trying to do my part to make the world a more beautiful place.
Well, does it feel like that? Do you feel like, I have questions, but let me take a sidebar for a second. So do you feel let down? Because you talked about church on TV, and that makes me feel like church is important to you, because if I had to get to church through television, I definitely wouldn't do it. So that seems like a commitment. And
it is important. Yes.
Yeah. And so you felt like you were, is that right? Like, you felt like you were populating the earth, and now you're spending your time worrying that your son can't run or swim, and that your other kid has diabetes and the other one has 2 markers. And like, do you feel, I don't know what the word would be. I need you to tell me how it feels.
I think I know what you're saying, but no, I don't feel
ripped off.
Yeah, I don't really feel like that so much. I do feel a little bit like I wish I wasn't making their life harder, because I didn't know I had these things, but I don't know that it would have stopped me from having them, because I want them. You know what I mean? Like, I want them in my life, and I feel like they make my life better. And I feel like as a family, we are strong. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of what we can do when we go into the world and we try to love people. Right. So like, I don't know that I would have changed anything I think I maybe, as a young person, was a little bit more naive as to what life was going to be like when you got older.
Yeah, it's a very hard question to answer, because if I said to you or to anybody or to me, here's what life is like with this issue, whatever it is, and you don't have the context of knowing your children at that point. Like if I could take you back in a time machine and say, look, you don't have kids, you have no connection to them. I know this is what you want to make a family, etc. But here are the things that are going to happen. I think that the 23-year-old you, or I don't, how old you were when you were really considering having children, 25.
Ironically, 23 is when I had my first one.
I was doing the math, like vaguely, so that,
yeah, good job.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder how that you would have answered, because I don't know how that version of me would answer either. And I don't also want to articulate on the podcast that if you gave it to do over again, I'd say, no, this isn't worth it, because that's hurtful for people to hear who have, type 1 or my kid or whoever, and I don't mean it that way. They're two different. I mean, there's no way to do what I'm proposing, right? You can't actually go back and ask yourself that question before you know this. So knowing what I know now, I wouldn't make a decision that led to Arden not being here. Like I just wouldn't do that. But I take your point.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's a tough thing to swallow, because people are now you have these people you love and now they're struggling, and it's not the kind of struggle where you're just like, oh, you have a headache, take this aspirin, it'll go away. It's the kind of struggle where you don't even know what's happening, and you go to a doctor and the doctor's like, I don't know, go to a different doctor. And that's a long road. I mean, of all the kind of fascinating things that you've said or not said so far today, when I asked you what the markers were that sent your 13-year-old to rheumatology, you couldn't think of it. And that's not because you're not paying attention. That's because you're overwhelmed and there's a lot going on. I think it sounds to me. So, but what are his complaints? Like just the tiredness? I mean, did they check him for hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's?
Yeah, I make them always check thyroid and all those kinds of things, like every year at well checks all the time, just because that's how I am. It was the ANA teeter was the.
What do their TSHs come back like? Because a lot of times doctors will tell you they're in range, but they're high, and then you can medicate that and feel better.
Right. So a lot of times they'll call us and tell us, right? And so when I asked what the numbers were specifically, I can't tell you what the numbers are at the moment because we've been away enough from those appointments, right? Sure. Like my kids are February, January, December. I have one in June and then September birthdays. So really it's been closer to a year and I don't have a great memory. Especially like for some of those types of little things. Like I know where to go look for it because I know I don't remember. I keep it somewhere.
I have it written down. Listen, if I was you, I wouldn't remember either. Don't worry.
Yeah. But I don't remember where I was going with that. See how that went?
No, it's fine. Well, I was just asking like what if their TSH numbers were coming back over 2.
Oh yeah. I do remember like asking about it close enough to where I felt like it needed to be that I was like, okay, that's fine. Because they don't like, I wish it was like in the patient portal where you can just go look at it and then I could like screenshot it and save it in there and look at all of them my own self. But the pediatrician specifically will just call and go over all of the numbers and discuss it, which I do appreciate because then we can talk about it as opposed to just kind of looking and we can discuss what we want to do from there.
Yeah.
But if you forget or you don't write it down or you're somewhere else, then you don't really have a great way. Or if you're like on a podcast and you're like, I want to talk about this specific detail.
Well, one of my,
I have to be vague.
One of my anxiety points is as you're searching for the answer to a problem, I always think, what if we already found the answer and we're not looking at it?
Right.
And like, do you know what I mean? That it's that idea of wasted time. Like, what if we did a blood test, got this answer, and just didn't ring the right bells for people? So it sits there written down on a piece of paper, the answer to your problem, and now you're moving forward to another doctor, another doctor, another doctor, and here it is, way back here, the answer. I always, and especially for a person like yourself who's managing 6 kids, and there's health issues kind of spread around, you have them yourself. Like, how much time can you actually spend sitting down, poring over all this stuff, trying to go, hey, well, what does this mean? Somebody address this. Plus the way we talk to doctors, the communication process, you sit in it, you go and you sit down in this thing, and they look at everything and go, well, these tests were okay. And then you just go, oh, okay. And then you write those off then. Like, all right, well, that wasn't the issue. We'll go to the next thing. But I mean, just being, so your 13-year-old, for an example, his complaints are just, he's tired and he's not performing the way he used to.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really what I saw for him. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably other things that he's not discussing.
Okay.
But that's what I see for him. My daughter, I saw more like arthritis-y kinds of things for her. And then a lot of her stuff was really kind of triggered from when she broke her fingers. And then she was allergic to her cast. And then since then, she is super responsive to anything. It's gotten a little bit better, but like right after she had like a contact dermatitis from her cast, like her arm was swelling above her cast super big, and we had to make them take it off early.
So she's having an autoimmune response to the cast.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then, but really, like, we went to a bunch of doctors repeatedly. We ended up going to an ER, finally went to a dermatologist. And then we floated around for 3 years trying to figure out, like, why is it? And then not too long ago, I was like, wait a minute, doesn't this sound like an autoimmune response that was triggered by something? And then, so from there, and then I was like, and then, she's had some joint issues. She'll kind of have like swollen knees. She's 6 foot and 14 at the moment. So like and she's very athletic. Like, she's a swimmer, but she also did cross country, and she's built very, you can tell that she swims 6 days a week, and she runs and she works out and she tries to eat really healthy. And you know what I mean?
Tell me for a second about the knees. They're swollen. Are they warm to the touch?
Sometimes they'll be warm, red, swollen. Yeah. And then sometimes like her hands. So it's more knees and hands. Sometimes elbows will play in it. It definitely is affected by weather, cold. Like when we went to Colorado a couple years ago for Thanksgiving, she was like just so achy every time we'd go outside and like play in the snow. And she, you know what I mean? Like, so that's played a lot more closer to like my husband has psoriatic arthritis. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, okay, maybe you're getting like, maybe you actually have something more like that, which is, also autoimmune. And so, okay, well, maybe that's kind of also happening.
Yeah.
There.
And is she seeing a rheumatoid physician?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the rheumatologist did a whole bunch of stuff, including a lot of genetic testing. And then we see him again in middle of September to kind of go over everything. But he also sent her to like an ophthalmologist. He sent her for a CAT scan of her hands and an MRI of her hands. And, also to like a specific allergist, for kind of looking at, why she reacted to the cast. Mm-hmm. Because she also gets like a contact dermatitis looking rash as opposed to more hives. But like for weird things, like sometimes she'll like eat peanut butter and we're like, this brand, like she can't eat Jif anymore, right? Like that's not a brand that she can eat. The rest of the family could eat it, but she can't. So we were all natural peanut butter. Well, now even some of those she can't. So we're like, maybe it's the oil in the peanut butter, because she can do like PB Fit. She can toss that in like a protein shake and that's okay. So it like, there's some weird things there, which she just found out she's allergic to colophony, which is a pine and in resin. It is like the biggest thing that it's in. And it's in like paints and makeups and all different things.
Wow.
So I don't know. We'll see where we are from there. But they both had that like definite high marker of that ANA teeter.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm glad everybody's being seen. Then it seems like you're moving towards something. I mean, the red knees, the heat, the cold and hot, like that does sound, and there's RA in your family, right? So, I mean, that seems like, have the doctors talked about what they would do to try to help her if this is what it is?
Yeah, they kind of told her, like, at least tentatively, that like it's an idiopathic arthritis at the moment, which is more like from what I've read, like more for like kids who are like diagnosed like in that teen area. And so at the moment, it's still more of a kind of treat the symptoms a little bit more, but it does have like some skin element to it for her, which is more on her scalp, which is super fun when you're a teenager, you know? So, but we just got a new like treatment from the dermatologist, and that seemed to actually really help significantly. That's more for psoriasis than just eczema, which is kind of what they were treating it like before, but they can kind of go hand in hand.
Well, yeah, there's a lot also on top of all that. ADHD, there's some NIH writings about it. One of them is a personal history and maternal history of autoimmune diseases were associated with increased risk of ADHD. And several authors have proposed associations between ADHD and inflammatory mechanisms due to positive findings regarding inflammation-related genes. So it's really, I mean, that's a lot. It's just, geez, are you okay? I asked you earlier and you blew right past it, but
am I okay?
Yeah,
I'm good.
You're okay? Okay.
I think I didn't even hear you. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. I wasn't sure if you didn't hear me or you were just like, I'm not okay and I don't need to say it.
Who's okay? What's okay even mean?
I'm not even sure at this point. You know, the most stunning thing you've said is that you helped your neighbor pick up rocks. My neighbor is, I don't think I've ever shared this, but we live across the street from, I don't mean this like in a bad way, but she's so old. This very, very old woman. Like when we moved in 20 years ago and I first saw her, I thought, oh, that lady will be dead soon. Like that's how old she is. You know what I mean? And, and she lives with her nephew. But if she's in her 80s, he's, in his 50s. And he was sort of, he used to be the guy in town who would, kind of show up like passed out places, and that doesn't seem to be anymore. But they're very, I don't know the word, I can't explain the word other than to say that the piece of property they have filled in every square inch with a bush or a tree. Like no one's going to buy this house unless they want an arboretum later. They spend every waking hour tending to the grounds. And besides the fact that she will sometimes scream and yell at you when you're driving in and out of your driveway for reasons that are completely innocuous, like you're not doing it. Like you come out of your driveway, stop at the end, go to turn, and you just hear asshole. You're like, oh, okay, we've never spoken. We don't know each other. Like I tried waving and talking in the beginning, but it didn't matter. They wouldn't respond. Anyway, I tell you all this to tell you that this is not an infrequent thing. But frequently she will go outside with a heavy pair of metal kitchen shears and cut the weeds at ground level with them. And she'll spend days doing it. Like just, and there was this one time we were all up late. Hold on. I swear this happened. Let me get a drink. You were in the house. We watched a movie. It was late, 2:00 in the morning. You're closing everything down. The house is getting quiet. And all we could hear was like, ting, ting, ting. And everybody's like, what is that? And we got quiet. And we're like, it's outside. It's outside. So we start looking out the windows because, what the hell? Ting, ting. And then finally one of the kids goes, oh my God. Now it's after 2:00 in the morning. She's across the street cutting the weeds with her scissors. That's what the tinging was. So when you were like, we helped our neighbor pick up rocks, I was like, oh, people talk to their neighbors? I was like, they like them enough to do. I mean, I would like her if she didn't like creep the fuck out of me, if I'm being honest, Charissa. But she's like a Scooby-Doo bad guy. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's pretty creepy.
It is very strange.
I don't know. I don't like that one.
I can't even tell you the story of one time my kids were playing in the driveway and she just randomly started screaming at them. And I think I had enough. So I went to the end of the driveway and I had harsh words for her, which seemed to push her back into the house. And when it was over, I turned and I looked at my daughter's friend and she was like, oh. And I'm like, sorry, didn't mean to, sorry. And I'm like, she can't yell at you guys. Like, it's like, you're not doing anything. You're just existing on our property. And she's just, there's something clearly, let me be honest, there's something very wrong. You know what I mean? So most of the times they're innocuous, and then every once in a while they're just like out of their minds. Anyway, let me ask you here at the end how your son's managing with the type 1 and how you're making out with it. Did you get certain technologies? How did you start? Like, how's it going?
Yeah, we got the Dexcom G6 pretty quick. Not quite as immediately as I wish we would have, looking back. I think the whole put something on your kid was a moment for my husband, when we were still in the hospital. Mm-hmm. But within a month or so we got it. And it's magic. Everybody needs one. And then he's on the Omnipod now. And he has been for I guess it'll be 2 years in November. So, and that's really been very, very helpful. I wanted him on a pump simply because we needed to be able to adjust his basal. Mm-hmm. He needed to be significantly lower at school and significantly higher at night and at home.
Okay.
We needed to be able to double or triple it. And be able to step it up and step it back. It almost looks like stair steps, like when you're looking at the line. And that was super helpful. He's also, for the most part, adrenaline still makes him drop more than it makes him rise. Mm-hmm. I don't know why his body wants to try to kill him when it's supposed to try to save him.
That's interesting. I've heard other people say that, by the way, that that fear and anxiety where some people get a bump up makes them crash down.
Yeah. And so for him, when he walks into the school building, his basal, he's around 11 units during the summer. And as soon as we hit school, he can probably go down almost a full unit just for being at school during the day. Mm-hmm. And sometimes even a little bit less. And we don't necessarily always have to cover every carb, where at home, I still would cover 2. You know what I mean? The only time I'm you might be okay is if you're 85 and you're eating something that says it's 1. I'm okay, you can eat that one thing right now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, no, we have to cover that. But at school, he might even be able to go to 5 or whatever and not have to necessarily worry so much about it. So it's weird. And then the second he walks out of the building, at 3:00 or whatever, that moment is when his basal will go from, whatever it is, it'll double for him to walk out the door.
So you're saying that so while he's at school, he almost needs the equivalent of 5 units a day, but away from school, it's more 11.
Correct.
Total basal.
Well, during the school year, he gets around closer to 9 and 9.45 or something.
Right.
I think that's about what it is, with all the adjustments. But during the summer, he was 11, solid, just basal.
Right. So when he's not at school, he's getting like 0.45 an hour on average. But when he's at school, you lose a couple of units on that total basal, and most of it goes away during the daytime while he's at school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, he'll go down to about like 0.25 during different parts of the day, like during recess and lunch.
Yeah.
And
is he super active at school?
PE. Yeah. I mean, he'll play hard when he's at recess. He's not one to like kind of do nothing, but like it'll need to start almost as soon as he walks in the building to drop down. Yes. And as soon as he walks out, he will start rising the second he comes out of the building, because he starts relaxing. Yeah. And then when he falls asleep, it's significantly more then, like as soon as he falls asleep, every time.
That is super interesting, because Arden's exactly the same, the opposite. Like she needed more at school, and the minute she left school, her blood sugar started to drop.
Well, when you were talking about that on episodes previous, I just did whatever you said there, opposite.
You did the backwards. Yeah. You're like, I
was like, that makes sense. Okay, let's just do opposite of what he just said.
Wow.
And that will probably work. And then it kind of did.
Good. I'm glad. Well, that's really something. Geez, I'm not sure what to say. Do you look at your other two with markers and wonder if they're going to get type 1?
Sometimes, even the ones that don't have markers, every now and again, I'll be like, I feel like I need to just poke your finger real quick. Come here. Because I think that is always now in the back of your head, like, are we sure we're good? Like, you just went to the bathroom like 18 times.
Yeah.
Do you have an UTI, or are you trying to have something, you know what I mean? Like, what's going on? Or you just had a bunch to drink. That's also a thing. But, it's still a little bit there. I don't worry about it though. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I think if you'd asked me in that first year, I'd have been afraid of it.
Yeah.
More, but now I'm like, well, I mean, we know what we're going to do, and they're more ready to like take it on even their own selves than we would have been. And now they have somebody. We had nobody until halfway through Titus's first grade year to even know another kid who had type 1. Mm-hmm. Like we had nobody near us. And the podcast was like legit my best friend. Oh. Like it was the place I could go to know someone or something.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for telling me. Do you think that the type 1 doesn't scare you as much because you now have perspective about ailments that don't seem to have answers? Like I always think of the type 1 as at least it has an answer.
Yeah, you know I think I 100%. I do feel like it does, and it was an answer. It was a quick answer too, mm-hmm. right? Like as soon as I knew for sure that something was wrong, it wasn't very long. Once we were in the hospital, I think we were really only there for probably 2 hours in the ER before literally the ER doctor came running in and was like, I know what's wrong. We're canceling this ultrasound. He has type 1. I'll be right back. And then she was like, okay, I'm coming back. Let's talk about it. And you're going up to the PICU. And like, it was scary, but at the same time, like, okay, we had an answer.
Yeah.
We've had other things come up that were like, okay, we still don't have an answer. What's going on there?
I find that difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. That feels harder than, okay, well, this will be the next thing. And we know what to watch for. So that doesn't feel as scary.
Yeah. No, it's a weird thing to say, but I understand how you feel and I agree.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I appreciate you doing this. This was, it's enlightening. There's a lot going on in your life, obviously. And I have one last question though. What was the first thing? Like, was it Titus's type 1? Like when was the first time you thought, oh, one of my kids has an issue?
Yeah. I swear it was not long before Titus was diagnosed that I said, how do we have 6 kids and nothing's wrong with anyone? Like there should be something happening. I feel like that's the thing that should be happening. that doesn't feel normal. So, I think maybe I was just like living in a happy little bubble for a minute. And then, now it's like, I think that, so Titus was the first,
Okay.
like big thing. And then I feel like, honestly, his diagnosis helped us to kind of look into other things, not just for my household, like my personal home, but like also for my siblings and my, people started kind of looking a little bit more. And I have friends who will reach out to me and say, oh, I have this friend, they're having these symptoms. What should I do here? I think you should call your doctor and go get ask for a test here. And if you're super worried about tonight, then go get a glucometer and check it out real quick. And, or if you're super concerned and you want to come over, like come over, I will check it.
Right.
So I've met people in town at like the local, little Dairy Queen or whatever. And been like, hey, let me do a finger poke in the car. See how you don't have to worry, so, and you do, or please go get a Dexcom or, whatever it is, it's been nice to, I guess, have a community and being able to help a little bit more
are you,
that way.
Are you saying that the things that you're identifying in your family are helping other members of your family identify things too?
Yes.
Okay. So they have complaints that they were ignoring, but now you've given like voice to it and they're like, oh, that is how we feel too.
Yeah. Like what if that's an autoimmune thing that's connected to a bunch of things as opposed to your leg hurts and that shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to that shouldn't hurt for 30 years.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, what if there's more to it than that?
Well,
and then also like how we advocate at a doctor's office has changed significantly, like because of trying to do type 1, right? Like I want to pump and I want it before you said it, I'm ready. So like, let me prove to you that I'm ready. Here's all the things. Here's what I'm going to do. And here's why I need it. I need to be able to change the basal. I need to be able to adjust it here and here and here. I need to be able to keep him in range here. And so, being able to go in and say like, this is what I want and why, and then going into my doctor's office and being like, now for myself, I need you to check these things. And I want you to adjust my medicine here. Also, I've changed this for myself and this is working. So I need to make this adjustment. And then, same thing, like when I call my mom, I'm like, hey, you need to say this to your doctor. Don't wait for them to call you.
Right.
Call them. Tell them what you need. And if they're not listening, new doctor. That's the next step.
Well, that's really, that's excellent that you're doing that and helping people to kind of advocate for themselves better and for yourself. But it's so something good's come from it. It's helping other people realize what their ailments might be, and hopefully they'll do what you're doing and chase it down and see what they can figure out.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know that you need to push, you just trust a system that is not quite there, then
doctor said it's okay. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
How many do they see? You live with it. They don't.
Yeah.
So
no, I was just telling Jenny yesterday that my mom's blood pressure went up and the doctor was like, oh, we're just going to give her more medication. And, it didn't work. And so I said, well, what are you going to do now? And the nurse said, well, your mom's got heart problems. Like, these things don't get better. They get worse. And I was like, oh, wow, they gave up. How about that? I called the doctor and I said, due respect, you're a general practitioner. Send my mom a cardiologist. Sent a cardiologist. The cardiologist was like, oh, yeah, there's newer medication that works better. We'll switch her. And in like 2 days, her blood pressure was coming down. But the other doctor would have never known to do that and wouldn't have asked any more questions. He did this. In his brain, he went, this is the problem. This is the answer I have at my disposal. That didn't work. Oh, well, that was it.
Yeah.
It's just, you do really have to keep pushing for yourself. Somebody might know something. So
there. Yeah. And keep looking until you have it. Yeah. I did a bunch of reading after Titus was diagnosed. I wanted to know everything right away. Your podcast was recommended pretty quickly on like Facebook, but it took me a minute to get there, which I think was like the stupidest thing I ever did.
Oh,
As
well,
far as like weight, because I expected it to not be so much knowledge. So now when I recommend to people, I don't just say like, hey, go listen to the podcast. I'm like, you need to listen to this episode and then these things, or go listen to 411, which will tell you where you want to start from there, like this area or that area, and go find your questions answered there, because it's not just a listen to people chat all the time, although that's kind of what I did, but there's so much learning there that it was beyond. And I spent hours and hours. Like, I don't know that I did anything else for probably 6 months straight. Like, I didn't watch TV. I didn't read anything else. All I did was like podcast was on while I was painting and cooking and cleaning and washing, you know, like whatever I was doing,
sure.
It was on and I was learning, and it was amazing.
I'm glad. That's really, that makes me happy to know. You don't do something like this and hope that it doesn't help people. So it's nice to hear it. Actually, I get an email when somebody leaves a new review for the podcast, and one popped up while you were talking. It's so funny how much it mimics what you just said. She said in this review, I just started listening from episode 1. I'm already hooked. It is hard to find a trustworthy podcast that specializes in type 1. Mm-hmm. So, that's what we're trying to do. So it's nice that it's reaching people that way. It really is. Charissa, I really appreciate you doing this. I'm up against time today. I have to jump and do another thing, but I want to thank you for taking the time to tell us your story and the story of your giant family of 8 people. You have 8 people in your family. Holy God. Wow.
My little crew.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Scott. It was a lot of fun.
Let's thank Charissa for coming on the show and sharing her story. And let's thank CozyEarth.com for offering 35% off site-wide with the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. And don't forget to check out, speaking of checking out, ContourNext.com/JuiceBox. Like I said earlier, and I sincerely mean this, you're using a blood glucose meter. The information that comes back from it is important to you. The least you could do for yourself is make sure you're getting a really good, accurate meter. ContourNext.com/JuiceBox. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it very much. Don't forget to check out the private Facebook group. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.